I'm Ollie Evans and this is my S14.5 2JZ that I've been running the British Drift Championship for the last couple of years. And today we're just going to give you pretty much a rundown of what the car is, what the spec is of the car, and basically, yeah, show you everything that we've done to this ahead of winning the 2019 championship. So yeah, we run a 2JZ engine that was built by DY Engines sort of 2 years ago now. We've been running the engine and yeah, it's been absolutely fantastic. We took in basically an unopened 2JZ non-VVTi and he rebuilt it from the ground up. He put Manley rods in it, CP low compression pistons. We actually run garage whiff bit cams. I'm pretty sure they're 272 cam, so quite a high lift cam. It's all run on a Link ECU at the moment, Link G4 Fury, which we could be changing out sort of in the next coming weeks if another sponsorship comes to light. So yeah, that's something that we could be changing on this quite soon. We run a Owen Developments GBT 6982 turbo with a V-band housing. We had APW make us a complete custom manifold with the V-band flanges for both the turbo and the wastegate. So we run a Turbo Smart 60mm hypergate on this car as well. So you know, we wanted to make sure that the turbo flowed and the boost control was correct basically, so that's why we went for such a big gate. We did around 1.2, well, we had multiple map settings. We had 1 bar, 1.2 and a 1.4 bar setting when we had the car mapped, so that the turbo's really not even being used to its full potential really. So yeah, that's basically the hot side there. And then going over to the other side, we have injector dynamics 1000cc injectors. I think they're 10 or 1050 IDX or something like that. They were expensive. We run a Taku garage inlet plenum. This is probably one of the cheapest inlet plenums that you can get, but it's really easy to fit and it comes with a fuel rail and a 90mm throttle body basically, so you can bolt all that straight on, and as long as you're not running like mad high boost, then you're not gonna make a mess of it. Some inlet plenums do open up, and yeah, touch wood, this one hasn't so far. So yeah, that's been super reliable for us. We actually run a cable throttle on this car. We don't run fly-by-wire, which is what we're going to be running on the new car, because we don't run any anti-lag or flat shifter or anything, because we've never really had a need for it. So yeah, we kept this one quite simple and just wanted it to work basically. Not that big. We run a external electric pump system, so we actually have a Davis Craig David water pump that's controlled via the ECU and everything, so we don't have to worry about heating issues or a water pump failure or anything like that. So we have that basically bolted down the front here, so it's sort of like a self-bleeding system as well. Run one of my own alternator kits, so it's actually a conversion kit, so we can run a 180 amp BMW alternator. Again, that's been super reliable. I've always run this on this car because we run the electric water pump, electric power steering, big radiator fans. You know, we've got fans on the oil cooler and everything, so there's a big draw on power. So we wanted to up the amps of the alternator, and the standard JZ alternators, they just can't seem to hack it. So yeah, that's probably one of my favourite things that I've done on the car really, because that was all done by me. So yeah, that's all that sort of side of things. Again, electric power steering. We run an Astra power steering pump, make all custom lines for it, a fully reconditioned S14 rack that I actually have done myself as well. So I get racks reconditioned. I can recondition power steering pumps as well, so we can sell you one of them. We run the VP Racing Fuels MS109 fuel in this car, and that made such a difference with the power. Like, we run relatively low boost. We run a 1 bar, 1.2, 1.4 bar. We did 540 on 1 bar, 540 horsepower. The 1.2 bar was 620, I think it was, and then the 1.4 bar was around 680, 690 horsepower. So, you know, relatively low boost in comparison to the power levels that we were seeing, and that's largely down to what the fuel is capable of. And we could have really pushed the turbo and probably done, you know, up towards 800 horsepower, but we didn't really need it, and we didn't want to make, you know, other parts struggle with keeping up with the engine. So talking about the power of the engine, and basically the reason we didn't want to run too much power was because the gearbox in the car was probably one of the weakest links, because we run a 530 diesel gearbox in the car. We got the conversion plate and the clutch kit. It's a twin plate ceramic clutch from Extreme, which then helps us fit the BMW gearbox basically. So yeah, that's been pretty reliable. It's only sort of let us down once or twice this year, where we actually blew up 4th gear, which happens with these boxes, but they're only a couple of £100 a go, so in relative terms it's only a couple of tyres. So yeah, going on from the gearbox, we had a custom prop made. We still use the rubber donut, or the guibo I think it's called, for the gearbox. So we had a custom prop made. Still run a 2-piece prop, just because I've always had reliability with them, and again, never broken a prop. We actually run a Skyline R33 GTST diff in this car, so it's a 4:1 ratio, 5-bolt drive shafts. So with the 4:1 ratio and the diesel beamer box, the ratios are so low in the box that we actually start off in 2nd gear. 1st gear is like a crawler gear, so yeah, we start off in 2nd and then straight over into 3rd. So generally we use a 3rd and 4th gear for the tracks in the UK, and custom made a shifter which locks it into 3rd and 4th, which we'll show you in a minute. So in theory it's like a poor man sequential, but yeah, it's worked for me, and I quite like it because you can't really miss a gear. I do crunch gears because it is a real short shift, which you've probably seen. All that means is I can change gear faster than the synchros in the box, which is usually a problem. But yeah, it's worked really well this year, and yeah, I'm quite looking forward to trying a sequential gearbox. I have no clue how to drive with one, so yeah, should be quite interesting to see the comparison between the new car and this car. But yeah, I do really like the gearbox, the diesel boxes, so yeah, we'll keep running these in this car, and yeah, it just works. So inside the car we try to keep it basically as simple as what we can, have minimal gauges telling me what's going on, because I don't really want to know what's going on when we're in competitions, and because usually if you've got gauges flashing at you, it's distracting. And something I found with my old setup was I had gauges everywhere and red flashing lights, and it used to drive me nuts because your attention would always be drawn to that. So with this car I actually don't have any gauges other than sort of my water pump temperature, which gives me my water temp and my voltage, alternator voltage. So that's basically all I can see up in front of me, and I have a fuel gauge as well, a level sender that I put in the tank. And other than that, it's pretty simple. My ECU controls everything, so if I have a drop in oil pressure, drop in fuel pressure, too high water temps, then the ECU itself will turn the engine off and protect the engine in effect. So that's all done automatically, which sort of takes the pressure off me when I'm driving. I haven't got to see that, and if I do have an issue, then we can just plug the ECU in and see what the issue is at that point. So yeah, the shifter, we actually made a custom lock shifter. So when I was saying before about the ratios in the box, we come across basically from second into third, and it locks the shifter into third and fourth, so you can't miss a gear. So you go forward into third, back into fourth, and that's locked. So yeah, you can change gear really fast, and sometimes you beat the synchros to it, which I do quite a lot, but it'll go in and you don't miss. And yeah, I very rarely miss a gear, but I do miss a synchro every now and then. Hydro, I have a Federal lacy bars. I used to do BMX in a couple of years back, so I actually adapted a set of handlebars into the Hydro, and I actually have this in all of my cars. Is quite a big lever, especially with the big tyres that we run now on these cars and the grip. You do take a bit of pulling on the Hydro to lock up the back wheels. I don't run twin caliper setups, I run all in line with a bias valve as well. That's pre hydraulic handbrake, so yeah, I mess about with that sometimes, like as if I know what I'm doing. Steering wheel loose, probably need a new one of them, but yeah, I don't even know what brand it is. It's a brand of something, I don't know. No clue. So yeah, I have a couple of switches, keeping it to a minimum. I have wipers on and off. I have my power steering on a switch. Then I have a switchable map, which is my 1 bar or 0.9. I've got written on here 1.2. So that's my 540, 620, and then up here is my danger switch, which does my 680 horsepower, which actually I didn't use last year. I used once, I think, when I was over in Ireland in the dry, and there's no need for it, it's too much power. So yeah, generally I just use between these two switchable maps here, and yeah, that's basically the sort of complicated side of things. Coming to the rear of the car, we actually relocated the fuel cell. The beginning of last year, we actually put a Jazz 40 litre plastic fuel cell in the car. Generally we don't carry a lot of fuel, but we'll fill it sort of twice over a weekend, over a competitive weekend. And yeah, that's what I have. Is I have my fuel gauge at the front just to keep an eye on what sort of level is in there, because you don't want to be in and out of the car checking what's there and what's not. So yeah, we have a fuel sender in there. I actually fitted a in-tank lift pump into the fuel cell. I run a Deechworks 430 lift pump to a 2 litre swirl pot, which I got off Torx on eBay. So that feeds twin Bosch pumps, which actually works sequentially on the ECU. So what we did as well is we run AN6 lines on this car, so it did quite a lot of power considering it's only AN6 lines. So what we do is we run into a Y piece, one-way valves into a Y piece, and then a single AN line down to the front of the fuel rail, and that works sequentially with the fuel pressure sender, which is into the regulator. So we run it in that way, so if a fuel pump does ever drop, then the secondary pump can then back up the fuel pressure, so you sort of have a fail-safe as well, so you'll never drop pressure and you'll never damage the engine. So the secondary pump was not really needed, but we had it there as a backup as well. So yeah, that, again, we tried to keep that quite simple, and that's sort of tried and tested now, and that works really well. And yeah, with the electric water pump, we relocated the radiator to the back. So we actually run a Mishimoto dual pass radiator. Again, these are relatively cheap. for what they are, and you know, it's a simple setup, and keeps the car cool. We also run a Jag X-type fan, a pull type. These things pull a hell of a lot of ampage from the alternator and the batteries, so you know, that's something that you need to upgrade the alternator for as well. So as you can see, we've done a sort of a new crash bar sections for this year. I haven't finished painting them yet because I kind of did them quite late on the other night before we went to our little practice day. So yeah, that all looks quite rough at the moment, but it's rough and ready, and that's kind of what this car is it works, it's tried, it's tested, and when they ask us to run walls, we'll run walls in it. And yeah, we're not worried about this car too much, and everything's protected, everything's done correctly. So you know, we just want to keep it simple and reliable. On the front, suspension wise, we run Driftworks CS2s. We have done for the last 12 months. We put them on at the start of the 2019 season, and they've worked really well. They completely changed the car, and we actually gained a lot of grip just by upgrading our coilovers to the CS2s. So yeah, we've run them on this car for 12 months now, so we're familiar with them, which is why we wanted to run them on the new car as well. So on the front we run a 9k spring, and on the back we run a 5k spring. So it is super soft on the back, and you know, all we sort of adjust on the back depending on whether it's wet or dry. It's just the damping settings, so you can just adjust them on the top, which is super handy as well. The rear arms, we use all Driftworks arms, standard lower arms, and then just adjustable toe, camber and tension rods, so we can basically point the wheels wherever we want with that setup. We actually run the early model Driftworks Geomaster 1s on the rear, so they're quite a heavy duty lowering hub basically. So as you lower the car, you don't throw all your geometry out, and it keeps it all straight. And yeah, we really like running them, and we're actually running the upgraded versions on the S15, but for the S14 we kept the Geo 1s on there. And yeah, it's done us really well. On the front, the V1 Wisefab with the Ackerman washers, it's actually on a 4 degrees Ackerman at the moment. We changed that up just to see how they felt, and usually I run a 0 Ackerman, but apparently the car will move faster with 4 degrees Ackerman, but don't know, never tried it, so we're going to give it a test and see how that goes. Wheel wise, we have a set of 720s, which I've destroyed so many of them now. Again, they just break. I seem to break a lot of them. So yeah, we've got a few sets of them left, and on the front I run a set of rotors. Whenever they come up against another wheel, a rotor always seems to win. I don't know how that happens, but I've had plenty of fights with works wheels, and yeah, it seemed to break them and not break the rotors, so they can stay on this car for now. So we actually run the Skyline Z33 calipers on the back. We just run a single caliper, as I said before, with the hydro just in line. I always like the feel of that, and you can sort of back it up with the brake on the hydro, and I've just been used to that feel with the Beamers, the Nissans, everything. It's simple and cheaper, again, single caliper. On the front we run the Z33 4-pot calipers on the front, so just Skyline brakes again. Standard pads, don't run any fancy pads in them, because generally with drifting you sat there, everything's cold, and then you have a flat out run, and then you sit there and you cool off again, so you kind of need the pad to be ready to go, which I find with the standard pads, generally they're good to go from the off rather than an uprated pad, which you have to get a bit of heat in to make them work. And yeah, just keep it standard, keep it cheap. So yeah, that's basically the brake and suspension setup covered there. Body kit wise, I just run 50mm over fenders on the rear, just riv nuts on, basically just yeah, try and make it look as smooth as possible. Side skirts, rear bumper are Origin replicas, so Origin aggressive line I think they are, replica kit. The front wings, because it's an S14 and a 15 front, the front wings have actually been on the car since I bought it, and yeah, me and Drugi, my mate Drugi, we actually made some glue on over fenders, merge into the wing, and it looks hideous, but it covers the wise fab, so I kind of get away with it a little bit, maybe. Front bumper is an Origin bumper. It's actually similar to the kit which we think we want to run on the S15, so we're just kind of deciding, which is kind of why we bought this front bumper, to test fit on and see if we liked it, and we quite like it, so I think we're going to go ahead with that. The bonnet, don't even know where it is. It's an S15 bonnet. It's made of fiberglass. It's light and it hasn't broke yet, so it's staying on. Windows, we have normal window in the front, as you normally do. We have plexi windows here, courtesy of Beachy, and they were actually mint when he gave me them, because he doesn't even drive his car because he's useless. So yeah, we have plexi windows on there, standard glass on the sides, because I didn't really want to take them out, and the weight difference is minimal, so may as well just leave them in. Rear windscreen, we actually made our own out of a big sheet of Lexan. I just kind of overlay on a standard rear screen, cut it out, make it how I want it, basically the shape, and yeah, for the cutout for the rear rad. D-Max spoiler, roof spoiler. Always like running roof spoilers on the car for some reason. I just prefer the look. And yeah, that's basically gives you an idea of what the side profile of the car looks like, and yeah, what I like to look at in an S14. So if you've made it this far, I really appreciate it, because I probably wouldn't have made it this far through this video. And yeah, it's just a basic overview of the car. If there's anything else that you would like to know about this one, or the S15, or any of the other cars that we've got, then just let us know in the comments, and we'll get back to you on there. And we're pretty open with what we do and how we do it. There's nothing that we keep up our sleeve. Well, there's a couple of things, but if you ask me, I'll probably tell you. So yeah, thanks for watching, and yeah, hopefully you found it interesting. 520 on fucking Old Spice is coming now. You look orange, man. You look like Trump. What are you fucking doing?
Some fucking food, dipstick. Cheers. Yeah.
What is it?
Well, have a look.
Oh, me, look at you. Check you out. I can't believe how loose that is, man. I think it's a 2 litre. Don't know where I'm going with this now. Well, twin pot, single pot. Same fucking shit. So the front bumper, we run an Origin bumper. Great, great news.